Loving Sai Ram, Sister Geetha Mohanram. The Sri Satya Sai Global Council West Indies lovingly welcomes you to the series Awake, Unite and Inspire. We are extremely grateful, appreciative and blessed and honored to have you as a guest on this evening's program. Sister Geetha, share with us, how did you first come into contact with our beloved Mother Sai?
Sairam, Brother Faiz, Sairam to all my brothers and sisters in the West Indies. I will just start with a small prayer and we'll certainly have this conversation, Brother Faiz. Mukam karoti vachalam panghum langhayate girim yat krupa tamaham vande paramananda madhavam. Just to translate my pranams at our lotus feet of our beloved Swami, the prayer just means that, oh Lord, you can make, if you so will it, you can make the lame walk, you can make a person who is mute speak, you can do anything that you would like to do. So having said that prayer, I would like again to say Sai Ram to all my brothers and sisters over there. Thank you for asking me to come on this program, Awake, Unite and Inspire. I'm really honored to be here this evening because the wonderful thing about speaking about Swami or sharing one's own memories and interactions with Swami is that you relive it again. And every time somebody asks me, you are giving me the opportunity to go back in time and space and relive that joy and that sweet memory and the intensity of what one has felt in his divine presence. So thank you very much for giving me that opportunity. I'm happy to be part of the Trinidad and the West Indies Global Council program. Thank you so much. Brother Faiz, you asked me the question, how did I first come to Swami? What was my first, first time that I came to Swami? I think I'm very happy to say that my grand uncle, that is my father's uncle, my grandfather's elder brother, came to Swami in 1943, when Swami was still a young boy and no one had really heard about him. And of course, there is a whole story about how he, along with his daughter, how very unwillingly he came actually to see Swami. He was a traditional, orthodox, Hindu, Brahmin man from Bangalore in Karnataka state of India. And to be told that there is this divine incarnation is a young boy of 15 or 16 years old. He's of a different community, but he is divine. He came very reluctantly with his daughter, who had believed him, just to accompany her so that she would not travel with her young child and sister. So he came, but as Swami says, he came, he saw, he lost the game, is what Swami used to say about my grand uncle. He came, he saw me and he lost the game, and he never went back to Bangalore again. He lived in Puttaparthi all his life till he passed away in 1968. He was Swami's personal attendant, the first priest of the Prashanti Nilayam Mandir, which is inside. He was not a priest by profession, but Swami made him a priest. He was an engineer actually. So that is how his life started in 1943. So by the time I came in the 50s onto this planet, my family was already deeply rooted in devotion to Swami because my father was very close to his uncle. And the whole family, the extended family on my father's side especially, became devotees. And when my father first saw Swami in 1944, on November 7th, 1944, Swami told him, you'll be getting married soon. I've already seen the girl, bring her along next month. And my father got married in February. And so my parents' journey as a couple began in 1945 after my mother had seen Swami separately in Bangalore. So they kind of They got married and their journey began. And then my brother was born and I was born. So for me personally, again, I grew up with all these stories about how my parents got married, how my grand uncle went there and saw the Shiva form and became a devotee. I just grew up with these stories as a very much a part of my life. But the interesting story about how I came and came to Swami's feet, I always say that it must have been the many, many lifetimes of good deeds of my elders that I was born into that family. So Swami used to tell me this all the time when I was a child, that you are a troublesome creature. You gave me a trouble from the day you were born. So I have continued to be this troublesome squeaky wheel for Swami. But I'll tell you the story since you asked. It's an interesting one. My brother was born, he was 7 years older than me, and my mother was expecting me. And Swami had told her that this time she would have a girl child and that he would name her as well. He had already named my brother as Jagadish. He said, once the baby is born, you come here to Puttaparthi and I will name the child, but take care of your pregnancy, because my mother had had a difficult time with the first one. So she was expecting and she was very nervous about the whole delivery thing, because she has had a difficult time with the first one. So while she was in her third trimester, when it was getting closer to her date, she wanted to go to Puttaparthi and have Swami's darshan. And in the early days, early 50s, mid 50s, the travel to Puttaparthi, even almost till the 70s, early 80s, the travel to Puttaparthi was quite difficult. And in those days, the last 28 kilometers or 30 miles or so was just a bullock cart track. And, you would have all read it in, Satyam Shivam Sundaram and other books, how difficult the journey was. My father had a car. My father was a dental surgeon, quite well known in Bangalore. And he very much, he was reluctant to take a pregnant lady with a young child. But he finally agreed. I said, okay. He said, okay, I'll take you. And along with him, he took a friend of his, my father's friend, who was not a devotee. But he said, I just need another male person, because the 30 miles is a bullock cart road. Even though I go in a car, if I have a flat tire or something with a pregnant wife, it will be difficult. Why don't you come along? So the friend came along for the fun of it, just for the ride. They came, they had Swami's darshan. Swami blessed my mother, gave her vibhuti. He said, you'll have a girl, don't worry. Come back for the naming ceremony in the third month of the child's life, and I'll see you then. And then he told my father, when we are young, we are full of overconfidence. Swami says we should have self-confidence, but you're overconfident. And he told my father, it's already kind of late in the afternoon. Don't travel now. You go in the morning tomorrow. It was a weekend. It was a Sunday. And my dad was a doctor. He was a dental surgeon. And those were not the days when you had telephones. Many people in India, in Bangalore, didn't even have landlines, let alone there was no cell phone. So he said, don't go now. You get up early in the morning and travel in the morning. Don't travel with the lady and the child, my brother, at this time. So Swami said that, and he went on to rest in the afternoon after the morning darshan. But my father was adamant about coming back. He said, oh, every time we come to Puttaparthi, Swami never wants us to leave. He always wants us to stay. This is all taking for granted of those days. He said he never wants us to leave. Let's just leave now. And my grand uncle, Sheshigiri Rao, his name is there in Satyam Shivam Sundaram, he and his daughter who lived in Puttaparthi told him, look, Swami has clearly told you, don't go. Don't go. Go early in the morning. My father said, no, I have a lot of patients in the morning. They'll all come at 8 o'clock. And it takes almost 6 to 7 hours to reach Bangalore. Nothing is the matter now. It's just 5:36 in the evening. I'll reach there by midnight. So very adamantly, after evening darshan, even though Swami said, don't go, they took their Pad Namaskar. And Swami actually did not give my father Pad Namaskar, because in those days they did not leave without Swami's Pad Namaskar. So he did not give my father Pad Namaskar. He said, go tomorrow. But my father said, and many of you or most of you have been to Puttaparthi, the Ganesha gate where the Ganesha is there. There was no Ganesha at that time. There was only that banyan tree. So we used to park our car there. So my father told my mother, you get going. And the South Prashanti building that you have now, just to go down history a little bit, there were only 8 rooms, 8 or 9 rooms there. One was my granduncle's room, Sheshiri Rao's and Sri Kasturi's. There were about 8 rooms. So my father told my mother, get going after the evening 5:30 aarti or something. So much to their reluctance, they left, and they'd barely gone a few kilometers from Prashanti Nilayam when it started to rain very, very heavily. It was kind of setting sun, it was raining heavily, and quite soon it became dark. And as I said, it was a bullock cart road. It was going up and down the car. They couldn't see the road. And it was really raining. And I think many of you may have seen, there is a reservoir there near Bukkapatnam. We used to go around Bukkapatnam, Penakonda, Kottacheruvu, and all those places. So near Bukkapatnam, there is a water reservoir. Now it is all well built, but in those days, it was just a collection tank. And the bullock cart road turned very sharply to the left, which we would turn sharply when we traveled during the daytime. But in the night, nothing was visible. There are no electricity in those villages. And when my father was driving, it was about 8 o'clock, 7:30 in the night. It had taken that much time to come those 15 kilometers. And he could not see that left turn, which he had to make. And he just kept driving straight. And if he had gone even a few inches further, yards further, the whole car would have basically driven into the lake, the reservoir. But as the car started to go, he didn't see, they were just talking, and his friend was saying, look, maybe we should have just stayed back. When suddenly they saw a lantern in front of the car, and a villager in Telugu shouting, stop the car, bandi apu, bandi apu. And they saw a hand holding the lantern right in front of the windshield of the car. So my father immediately stopped, thinking he may hit the villager because it was right in front of his windshield of the car. And he stopped and he got out to say, get out of the way. Why are you like that? And when he got out of the car, there was no lantern and there was no person. But all of them, including my mother, the friend, everybody saw this hand holding thing. It was pitch dark. They couldn't see the person. So at that point, they said, look, this is real. And when they came out of the car, they realized that just a few yards, the car would have been in the reservoir. So then he backed up, turned around, went back to Prashanti Nilayam, but did not, by this time it was 11 o'clock in the night, he did not allow my mother to go to his uncle's room because he would have been blasted by them for having taken the risk. So he made my mother sit in the car, my brother sleep on her lap. The friend and he just sat in the car, and at 3:30 or 4 in the morning, he left because he did not want to face Swami after being disobedient to his word. He got up and left at 4 o'clock in the morning. He arrived in Bangalore around 9 o'clock, saw his patients, and went about his life. Pretty soon, in about a month's time, I was born, and my parents, as Swami had said, took me and my brother again, the baby, for the naming ceremony. And they all arrived in Puttaparthi, and Swami saw them, and he had a serious face. He told my father, have you brought your wife and thing? And in those days, there was no such a restriction and all that we have now. We used to have the run of the place. Everybody was, and mostly it was all family members. So everybody used to come together. We would always be in the veranda whenever Swami came. So Swami said, he said, tomorrow morning, I'll name her in the morning. And so he gave me my name as Geetha, because my mother was an ardent devotee of Lord Krishna, and she used to read the Bhagavad Gita every day, especially on Geetha Jayanti. She used to read all the 18 chapters without even a glass of water. So my Swami named me Geetha because she reads the Gita, and they had taken my horoscope and he wrote my name on it and everything. And then, so my father was very peaceful because he has disobeyed him 3 months or 4 months ago. Nothing was said about it, and the whole ceremony went through very nicely. And then suddenly, Swami looked at my father and said, I told you not to go. You left in the evening, and I had to come there in that pouring rain to stop your car from falling into the reservoir. So immediately there was a complete shock when Swami acknowledged the fact, because nobody had seen a villager. They just thought some villager, you always have that doubt, okay, some guy must have shown the lantern and gone off in the rain. He didn't stand. And he said, I had to come in that rain and I was completely drenched. And then he turned to Sheshagiri Rao, my granduncle, that's my father's uncle, and said, Sheshagiri Rao, you tell Padmanabh what happened. Padmanabh is my father. And my granduncle was saying, you people, you young people don't listen. You did not follow what Swami said. At about 9:30, when Swami had retired after having his dinner, my granduncle used to sleep outside Swami's room at night when Swami slept. And suddenly my grandfather or my granduncle heard Swami suddenly saying, stop the car, stop the car. So my granduncle ran into Swami's room. He used to sleep outside and says, what is this at 9:30 in the night? Suddenly I hear Swami's voice saying, Bandi Apu, stop the vehicle. And when he went there, he saw Swami completely drenched, standing in the middle of his room with his robe completely drenched. So he said, this was at 9:30 in the night. Swami had retired perfectly fine. And he asked him, Swami, what happened? What happened? And Swami said, look at your nephew. He didn't listen to me. I told him not to go. He almost took the whole family into that reservoir. They would have all been in the reservoir. And I had to go and stop the car. And he said that he was completely wet from head to toe. And Swami had to change at 10 o'clock in the night into dry clothes. So Swami many times would narrate this story to everybody, because I used to go for my birthdays to Parthi to see Swami or in Vrindavan. And he would always say to me, you were such a problem before you were even born. So that's how I kind of entered the world. But with Swami's grace and love, continue to grow like that in his very, very close proximity. Because of my granduncle. And then whenever he used to come to Bangalore, he used to stay sometimes in our home, in my parents' home. So he used to be with us. So I kind of just grew up with him there all the time, I guess, Brother Fines. Sai Ram. That was a long story for one question. Sorry.
No, that was absolutely wonderful and inspiring and very intriguing. Your family connection with Swami, the grand uncle. So there was this, lineage coming down of devotion and service to Swami. So you were actually, as you said, born into the fold of Swami.
Yes.
Actually, yes, because Swami was even given guidance and direction before you came into the world.
Yes, yes, yes. Because they came in 1943, and you have to understand the India and the village of those days, you know. It was, Puttaparthi was unconnected to anything. There were hardly any roads. There were all bullock cart tracks. And at that time, they became devotees when there was nobody there. So there was a very close connection between Swami and my grandfather. We all referred to him as grandfather, though he was my father's uncle, my own grandfather's elder brother. So, and my own grandfather also was very devoted to Swami. Swami loved him. So we just grew up in Swami's presence, and Swami was a young boy to them because they were all in their 60s and Swami was an 18, 19-year-old boy, So that's how the relationship was, yes.
So, Sister Geeta, I want to go back to that experience where your father willfully disobeyed Swami's instructions, but Swami, in spite of that, intervened to save not only him, but the entire family. So, what is the lesson when we look at an experience like this?
Yes, that's a wonderful question. I was hoping that you would ask me that. So, the whole idea, and for all of us, I think as devotees, it is a sadhana and it is a journey, and we intellectually we listen to Swami's discourses, we hear his words, we even many of us have seen him physically. But this gradual process of obeying implicitly the directions that is given by your, if you accept him as your guru and your divine Lord, then we have to be obedient to what he says. And my dad, he had become a devotee in 1944 himself, but he was a young man himself. Swami, when he became a devotee, my dad was 21 and Swami was 18, 19-year-old boy. So it took him some time, I think, to kind of practice that kind of a surrender, that when he tells you something, you have to implicitly follow that. And this doesn't apply only when he tells you physically in an interview or anything. His hundreds of discourses that Swami has given, he has given wonderful advice to us devotees as to how to conduct ourselves, how to lead our lives, what is the real goal of human life. So the lesson, I think, for my father and certainly for our whole family was that when he tells you something, even if you don't understand it at that moment because of your limitations of intellect, just follow it with faith. Just have the faith to follow it. Just do it. Later on, you may get an explanation. Sometimes you may not even get an explanation, but have the faith to hold on to his feet and follow it. And I think the fact that he still came and protected them just shows his divine love for his children who have many faults like us. We are what we are. He knows us just like every mother knows every child of hers. What are the weaknesses? What are the strengths of the child? And when the child has love for the mother will still continue to protect the child till the child learns. So I think that was the couple of lessons, that he protects you when you love him and you have that devotion and you are a good person and your intentions and sankalpa are good and you're still faltering a little bit, he will still look after you. But that implicit faith and obedience, we really do have to develop that.
Thank you so much for that perspective and that lesson, Sister Geetha. So, you've had so many wonderful experiences over the years from a very tender age and even before you were born. But I want to focus a little bit on some of the childhood memories and beautiful experiences you've had growing up under that watchful eye of Mother's side. Please share some of them.
One experience that happened to me when I was very young, I don't think I even realized that it was an experience when I was very young, was a beautiful one, which is still very, very fresh in my memory. Even now, even when I have become a grandmother with 4 grandchildren myself, but I was very young, and many times Swami would come to Bangalore in my dad's car. My father had a small little car, a standard Super 10, as it was called. I don't think those cars are even in existence anymore. I still remember the number of the car. It was a little black car. The car tag was MYB 98, 97 or something like that. So we used to bring Swami many times in that car from Puttaparthi to Bangalore. Swami didn't have all these cars that are there now. He used to have a Morris Minor. And he used to come many times. And the journey, like I said, Brother Faiz, was very, very difficult. You had to come in that bullock cart road up to Penukonda, through Bukkapatnam, Kottacheruvu, Brahmanpalli, all these tiny little villages where the roads were narrow. And then you would come to Bukkapatnam, which was the main sort of a bigger town where there was the bus stand and the railway station and all that. And from there, you had to travel to Bangalore. It took a long time. And he used to come. So one particular time that Swami was accompanying us, it was my parents were there, my brother was there, and I was there. And Swami said he would come to Bangalore. So he came, and I remember, we all sat in the car, and my mother and my father, Swami told them to continue to sit in the front seat. He sat in the back seat, and my brother was there. And it was a little car. It was not a very big car. It was a tiny little car. So many times he would make me sit on his lap, so that, it was more comfortable. He could sit comfortably. My brother could sit comfortably. So I remember sitting on, I've done this many times. I used to sit on his lap, And my I even now remember my father glaring at me from that little, the mirror that you have in the front where you can see the back seat. And I had short hair even then, and every time I moved, my hair would move and hit Swami in the face. So my father would keep glaring at me to sit still. But it's not easy for a tiny child to sit still for 7 hours. I used to be very stiff and still, and Swami would say, you don't look at your father in that mirror. You sit comfortably on my lap. Swami used to keep telling me. So that particular time we left Puttaparthi, I remember somewhere around 3:30 or 4. Swami never allowed us to travel in the evenings because the roads were bad. If there was a flat tire, there was really nobody to repair it. So we left, I think, around 3 o'clock or something like that. I was 3 years old. I remember this very clearly. And when we got into the car, I was sitting on Swami's lap. And my mother and father kept telling me, do not fidget when you sit on Swami's lap. Sit still. And my mother kept telling Swami, let her sit with me in the front seat, where I could sit on her lap. But Swami would say, no, front seat on the lap is not good because the dashboard is there, So it's not good. I will keep her. So I was sitting and we started to travel. And I think in those days in Puttaparthi, the bhajans used to start at 5 p.m. or something like that. And we were going, and I must have kind of dozed off a little bit. And I was leaning against Swami's chest because he was saying, sit properly, don't look at that. And he would tell my father, Padmana, look at the road and drive and stop looking in the mirror. So I was there, and suddenly I was leaning against Swami, and I suddenly heard the Omkaram start, Om start. So I thought, many times Swami would ask my mother and my brother to sing in the bhajans. They were not very great singers, but he would still say, sing bhajans on the way. So I kind of remember waking up or dozing. I was dozing off and waking up. And I heard this woman, I looked around and nobody was singing. And I could hear clearly in Swami's chest, the Omkaram coming from his chest. And then the Ganesh bhajan started. In those days, they used to sing a Telugu song, Shri Ganesha Shivuni Kumara. They used to sing that song. And I could clearly hear it. And then the bhajan, one after the other, the bhajan, and some, I couldn't I was very young, I was 3. And I turned around and looked at Swami because it was so strange. And Swami said, shh, in Puttaparthi bhajan is going on, simply listen, he told me. I could obviously see that nobody could hear, but I could hear when I was leaning against his chest. And the whole 25 or 27 minutes or so of the bhajan went on. And the arti went, in those days also, they used to sing a different arti that went. And then, Jai Bolo Bhagavan Shri Satya Sai Baba Vari, in Telugu, saying the Jaikara and the ending of it. And then Swami completely immersed in the bhajan, and the bhajan got over and he. And my parents, my mother, I remember looking around like, suddenly, how come she's so quiet? I was always a chatterbox. I would say something to Swami. Swami would answer. And Swami said, be quiet. She's listening to the bhajan. And my mother looked strange and thing. And then when the bhajan was over, Swami said, no, in Puttaparthi bhajan was going on. They're all feeling sad because I left Puttaparthi, and they're singing with a lot of intensity and bhakti. And she was listening to that. So I remember that with such clarity, just his chest, I could hear the bhajans. And it was a little bit later, I think, as I got older, I realized that we all take this bhajan singing as something that we do week after week, Akhanda bhajan, Shivaratri bhajan, this bhajan and that bhajan. But when it is done with that kind of intensity and bhakti and devotion, it reverberates in Swami's heart. And Swami just sat there immersed in this bhajan, and we were way past Penakonda on the way to Bangalore in a car. And I could hear those bhajans quite clearly, And it was later, even after I'd grown up in Ina, even after coming to the US, once when we were in interview room, another devotee who was in the interview room with us, Swami was talking about their Sai center. I think they were from Canada. And they were saying, Swami, the center meets on a Thursday. We have bhajans. And Swami said, yes, I know you have Thursday bhajans. And he even mentioned a couple of singers of their center. This person sings with lot of devotion, that person. And they looked a little surprised that Swami knew the names of those people in their Sai center. And Swami looked smilingly at me and said, ask her. She heard the bhajans in my chest long back. And this was when I was maybe 55 years old, 50 years old. And I had heard this when I was 3 years old. And Swami remembered that occasion and mentioned it to that devotee and said, she has heard, I hear the bhajans, ask her. He said like that. So that was such a great acknowledgement that what I had heard then was still truly true. And Swami remembered and I remembered. And Swami was acknowledging it after so many years. So I think that was a wonderful lesson for me, that these bhajans are not just words to be sung to show. Swami once had said, don't sing for the microphone, sing to me. So if we remember that, don't sing to the microphone, but sing to him, your voice will be in his heart. So that was a big lesson that I learned when I was really young, very, very young, 3 years old, sitting on his lap. So I think that was one of them. What was the other question that you asked?
Share some of those
Oh,
wonderful experiences. You shared that beautiful one. We are yearning to hear another few.
okay. Um, uh, Another wonderful experience that I had as a child, now we have, and even through the Global Council, we are seeing all of these programs now. We are seeing all the wonderful programs that is happening in Prashanti Nilayam through the Sri Satyasai Media Center, and we are all enjoying that. But we must remember that early on, the first way that Swami's message was disseminated was through the Sanatana Sarathi, and Swami started that way back in the late 50s, I would say, or maybe early 60s, I cannot remember the exact date now. And he asked Sri Professor Kasturi Garu to compile Swami's writings. And in those days, in the Sanatana Sarathi, only Swami's writings used to be there, not contributions of other people or anything like that. And later on, of course, they've compiled it and everything. And it used to be a small, thin magazine, that Sanatana Sarathi, hardly about 10 or 9 pages. And I believe the Media Center has done a beautiful documentary on how the Sanatana Sarathi was started and how Kasturi Garu used to do it. But the nice part for me was, because it was started, I used to spend all my holidays, all days when my parents could get away from, my dad could get away from his patients, in Prashanti Nilayam, actually. All my holidays, everything was spent there. And, that is like my mother's home to me. I could never imagine not being a part of Prashanti Nilayam in any way, because it started not only for my family as the Prashanti Nilayam that is there now, where Swami's divine presence is still there in the form of that Sannidhi that they have built there and everything. But for me, it has started with my granduncle in 1943 with the Patha Mandira. So there is my connection to Prashanti Nilayam is very strong. But in any case, when the Sanatana Sarathi was started, whenever we went to Puttaparthi, after the morning bhajan, when my cousins and I, we were all young, we would get into mischief playing. There was nothing there in Puttaparthi. We would run off to the Chitravati to play on the sands. It used to be very hot, especially in the summer holidays. That Swami used to tell my cousin and I to go and help Kasturi Garu with the Sanatana Sarathi. He said, go there. And, this was a marathon job for him. He was an older person. I mean, he was an amazing man. All of us must think of him every time any message comes out of the media center, because he was the first person who did it with so much love. He would take all those magazines to Penukonda, transport it personally. I remember Swami came to Bangalore to buy the printing press on which the Sanatana Sarathi was bought, and my father had gone with Swami to get that along with others to buy that the printing press which was transported. In any case, we used to go there, my cousin and I. I am sure, especially those living in the West and born in the West, I don't even know. If you go and Google it, you'll probably see one of those old printing presses. You have to typeset each sentence in reverse order, and you have to paint it with black ink. And then you put a paper and manually turn the printing press, and the paper gets printed with whatever you have put there. And then you have to take out those sheets of paper and let it dry because the ink is wet so that there are no smudges. And then you have to collate it and put it into a form of a book, staple it, and then it becomes the Sanatana Sarathi. That's how it was. So you can imagine 60 plus years old Kasturi Garu doing the typesetting to Swami's discourses, and you would print out a few pages by manually turning the wheel after painting the letters with black ink. It would dry and you would look and you would find a typo. There is a spelling mistake, or there is no full stop or a period somewhere. And again, the whole typeset has to be changed, repainted again, and re-manually printed. So it was a long process just to print the 10 pages. For it was once a month. It would take him the whole month to do it. So Swami would tell us to go and help. And I remember once I was there very obediently. I was a young girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old. And I would go, and my job, Kasturi Garu would give me, my mother used to have an old shirt of my father's. We would put it on so that the ink doesn't splatter on our clothes, my cousin and I. And our job was to paint the ink, and my cousin would manually turn that wheel because it was hard for Kasturi Garu to do it. So I was, and then the papers, we had to collect it and dry it on the black stone of that old room. The Sanatana Sarathi office used to be where there is the road now to the stadium. So that used to be there. So we had to do it. And once I was doing it, my cousin, he was a naughty little fellow. He was about 4 or 5 years old. After doing it for about half an hour, he would find some excuse, I need water or something, and disappear and not come back again. But I would obediently be helping there. And one day Swami came in that hot afternoon to see the press. And he looked at all the papers lined up there, and then he had brought a few people along with him. And I guess my face was all splattered with ink from that painting. And he said, "What is this? All painting yourself black. What is this, Kasturi? What has happened to her?" So Kasturi Garu was very fond of me, very sweetly said, no, Swami, she has been helping me for the past 1 hour. The ink has come on her face and her clothes. So Swami teased me, look at you, how you have become like this with ink marks. He said, no, she has helped me a lot, he said. So Swami very sweetly kind of pinched my cheek and said, oh, you have helped a lot, is it? Okay, don't worry, Bangaru, I will put your name in Sanatana Sarathi next time, he said. So all the people who had accompanied Swami just laughed because the Sanatana Sarathi contained Swami's writings. Nothing else. There was no contributions of other people. But Swami jokingly pinched my cheek and says, don't worry, I'll put your name, he said like that. And everybody kind of just laughed and patted my back, and everybody left. And then, but I was very excited. I was an 8-year-old kid. I went running to the room there. And I told my mother, Mummy, Swami said he'll put my name in the Sanatana Sarathi. So they all said, poo-pooed and said, what are you saying? Who will put your name in Sanatana Sarathi? It's all Swami's. He said, no, Swami came to the Sanatana Sarathi office and he told me he'll put my name. But all the elders basically just said, I don't know what Swami said, what you understood, what he said. They put all the Swami won't put all that. So I started to cry. Swami said, you're saying. Then one of the elderly aunts, she said, no, don't cry. I think next time Swami is going to write about the Bhagavad Gita. So in that, when he writes Bhagavad Gita, your name will come. Don't worry, she said. So I was very happy. Okay, Bhagavad Gita, if he writes, then my name will come. That's what Swami said. So this happened. Anyway, Swami never wrote that. Years went by, nobody remembered it. But he's such a loving mother, brother Faiz. If he says something, we human beings forget what has been done to us. Within 5 minutes of receiving something from somebody, our gratitude is so poor. we don't remember the good that others would do. But that small act that I used to do for Professor Kasturi by going and helping him, Swami remembered that and he had made that. And in Swami's 80th birthday, he asked me to speak for his birthday celebrations on Ladies' Day, in Swami's 80th birthday. So I spoke there. I was really honored. I spoke in front of so many people. It was very unexpected. I did that. And then after my talk, a few days later, Swami called me for an interview. And while we were all sitting, he suddenly looked at me and said, as though this was a conversation that had happened yesterday, he looked at me and he said, I told you, remember I told you I'll put your name in the Sanatana Sarathi? Did you see your name? He said. I could not remember what Swami is saying. I said, no, Swami. He said, I told you I'll put your name. Don't you remember? He said. I said, no, Swami. Are, ayo, he said in Telugu, they chappan kada Kasturi to when you were with Kasturi and you were in the Sanatan Sati office. Didn't I tell you? That was in 1966 or something. This is what Swami's 80th birthday in the year 2000. And Swami is telling as though it was just happened half an hour ago. He said, don't you remember I told you when you were with Kasturi? Oh, I said, what, Swami? He said, didn't you see? And he took out the Sanatana Sarathi from the windowsill of the interview room. He opened the pages and in the end page for the Ladies' Day celebration in the Sanatana Sarathi, 3 ladies spoke. One was the 2 other ladies, their names. And in the end, Mrs. Geetha Mohanram from USA spoke about her experiences with Sai or something. They had put it in the sun. And so, didn't you see? You have not read this month Sanatana Sarathi, December Sanatana. See, I told you I'll put your name. Your name is here. I said, my goodness, what he said in 1964, he is giving me the answer in the year 2080th birthday of his. What a memory he has and how he waits to reward us when maybe we are a little bit deserving to receive that kind of grace. And I really touched Swami. I said, Swami, I didn't even remember. He said, oh, you human beings, you forget everything. Me, I don't forget anything. He said. So those 2 incidents have really impacted me a lot, Brother Faiz. Because one, the omnipresence of Swami who accepts the devotion of the devotees, that you could hear the bhajans in his chest. The other, if he says, I'll do something for you, he will do it, but at his time. His time is different than ours. We have to remember that. He is on Brahma time and we are on human time. So we have to remember that. But he will do it in his time. Sai Ram.
Sister Geetha, that was mesmerizing. Oh my God. Swami always keeps his promises. And as you rightly said, he will take his own time to respond in his own divine timing. But what a blessing at the tender age of 3, Sister Geetha, you are actually hearing on Swami's chest the bhajans going on. Wow, what a blessing at a tender age. And
Yes.
then, you know, that Sanatan Sarati experience, that was 1964. So you're looking when Swami was about 38 years old, and in his 80th birthday, that's 42 years. Even you forgot. But he, God never forgets. My God, what a powerful message and lesson for all of us. Wow,
Yes.
really, really beautiful. Please share 1 or 2 more, Sister Geetha. It's so intriguing and divine. I think we want to hear more and more.
Yeah. Uh, you will have to have an Akhanda Bhajan kind of a session, Brother Faiz. But I will try to. You said my childhood. You know, my childhood was filled with Swami. I was so fortunate. I am eternally grateful to my elders. You know, Swami was there. He's the Divine Mother. But if it was not for our parents, our elders, who I don't know what good actions they did in what life they did it, but we were very fortunate that we were able to interact. But I am putting that aside for a few seconds and saying every single one of us who says we are a Sai devotee, we have done some wonderful good actions in our life, that we have come to know of him. We have heard of him. We have heard his voice. We have seen him. Some of us have interacted with him. That is only due to his blessings and the good actions that we have done. That is why Swami says the good actions that we do now becomes the bank balance for us for the future. So I'm always very grateful for my elders. And, I learned a lot from my parents, from my aunts and uncles, how they interacted with Swami, how they followed to the letter what Swami said. So these were some of the wonderful experiences. One beautiful experience again that I had, this was also, I think, in 1967, I would say. My family started the Akhanda Bhajan. My grand uncle and my aunts, they were the family which started the Akhanda Bhajan actually in 1944-45 time frame. What had happened was they had all gone and seen Swami in 1943. And in those days, there were no bhajans like we have now, 4 lines, 5 lines, but they used to sing songs. So they used to go to Puttaparthi. They were all wonderful singers, my aunts. So they came back to Bangalore and said, oh, we enjoy such beautiful Namasmarana in Puttaparthi. Let us do it in Bangalore as well. So in 43, after seeing Swami, they started to do Thursday bhajans by rotation in the 5 families first, and then the 8 and the 9 families together, the relatives. Every Thursday, they would do it by rotation. So this went on for a year. And after almost finishing a year of rotation of bhajans every Thursday, and we must remember that India was under British rule, under curfew because of the wars going on at that time. And they would walk from one house to the other, next house every Thursday, and they did the bhajans with great difficulty. And when they completed 1 year, one of the aunts, my aunt Jai Devi, she got the idea. She said, oh, we have completed 1 year of Thursday bhajans. Why don't we do 24 hours of Namasmarana and do that as a bhajan, as an offering to Swami for allowing us to do uninterrupted so many weeks Thursday. So they thought it was a wonderful idea. They wrote to my grand uncle Sheshgiri Rao, who had now stayed back in Prashanti Nilayam, like I told you. He had a vision of Lord Shiva when he saw Swami first time. So he just stayed back. So they said, we seek Swami's permission. So that's how the Akhanda Bhajan started. Swami wrote back saying, why do you want permission? I am coming for the Akhanda Bhajan. So it became a family Akhanda Bhajan. He used to come and stay in my aunt's house and uncle's houses for a few years. Then later on in our own house, my parents' house. And every year since 1945, the Akhanda Bhajan went on for 25 years till 1974. 2 years Swami did not come, so they don't count it as a bhajan year, even though they had the Akhanda Bhajan. So for 25 years, it was a family bhajan. And then in 1974, Swami declared it as a global Akhanda Bhajan. And then it became a global one now in 1975. So in these Akhanda Bhajans, when Swami used to come and stay in our house, we used to have tremendous, wonderful time with him, because we used to do it from Thursday to Friday, not the weekend like we do now. So Swami used to come on Wednesday from Puttaparthi and stay in our house on Wednesday night, and then the whole of Thursday, whole of Friday. And my family members all being very traditional, they would not allow Swami to leave on a Friday. He would leave on a Saturday. So from Wednesday to Saturday, he would stay with us. And it was the most wonderful time. And one particular Akhanda Bhajan, it was in a place called Gayan Samaja in Bangalore. I think it was 67. There were a couple of Akhanda Bhajans that happened in that particular hall. It was a huge hall. And the Akhanda Bhajan was planned there. And Swami came and stayed with us. And the bhajan started at 10:30 in the morning. It would start going on to 10:30 on Friday morning, when Swami would do Abhishek to the Shirdi Baba statue, and then the Arati, and it would end. So on Thursday evening, Swami stayed. He used to stay for many, many hours in the Akhanda Bhajan. He would go back sometimes late in the night, just to encourage the singers, because there was hardly 10 or 12 singers in those days. There was no Sai centers, no Samitis, no Global Council, no Satya Sai centers. It was still very, very in the early stages, in the 50s, early 60s. So one particular time he had gone to the Akhand Bhajan, he came home for dinner. And all my cousins were over there. They were the singers, they were singing. He came home, he had his dinner. And my mother never used to go to the bhajan because Swami will come anytime to the house. So she has to be there to make sure he's served with dinner or lunch or coffee or whatever the time was. So she was there. After Swami finished his dinner, it was about 9 o'clock. He called my brother and said, "You take Amma, take mother to the bhajan. Poor thing, she has not attended the bhajan at all. She has been so busy serving me here in the house. Let her also enjoy the bhajans for a while. You take her. I am going to retire now," he said. So my brother took my mother. So I was there, my dad. I would always travel with Swami up and down in the car whenever he went. So I came back with him. My father, my aunt, one other elderly aunt, we were all sitting there. And suddenly, around 9:45 or 10 o'clock at night, Swami came out of his room and he called my father, Padmanabh. He said, "I want to go back to the bhajan hall." By which time it had been raining very heavily in Bangalore. So my father said, "Swami, you have just come back. You're quite tired. I'll take you early in the morning. Why don't you rest?" My father was very protective of Swami. Their relationship was a wonderful one, my father's and Swami's. So he said, "Swami, why don't you rest now for a bit? I'll take you tomorrow morning early. You just came back and had dinner." He said, "No, no, 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 no. Bring the car to the front of the house. We have to go. We have to go," Swami said. So my father said, "Okay." And as soon as my father got into the car, Swami looked at me and said, "You, Nuvura," he said, "you also come." So I also went. I was the 8-year-old kid who generally jumped around, went with him everywhere. So I got into the car in the front seat. Swami sat in the back seat. We went to that guy in Samaja. It's hardly anybody, just about 8 or 10 singers. The public had all gone home. These people were singing, all older people. Some of them had gone away to have some coffee or something. In those days, when it was our family function, Brother Faiz, the Akhanda Bhajan, from Thursday morning 10:30 to Friday morning till Swami came back after Aarti, until Swami had lunch, everybody would fast. There was no eating, and now we all joke around and say now it is Akhanda Bhojan, you know. But in those days it was Akhanda Bhajan, not Bhojan. There was no bhajan. Even we children, everybody fasted. So these aunts said they would drink coffee and things to keep themselves awake and throats, able to sing. They had gone and we came. And one gentleman, one young boy, I mean, he must have been 24, 25. He was, or maybe a little bit older, he was singing one bhajan with his eyes closed. I still have the image in front of me, the microphone in front of him. And as soon as he saw the boy, I knew who he was. Because what had happened was 3-4 days before the Akhanda Bhajan, this man, this gentleman, he was 27, 28, along with his mother, had come to our house to meet my parents. And everybody in the neighborhood know that Satya Sai Baba is coming. But suddenly in the middle of nowhere, we would start putting all, decorations in front of the house. They would tie all the banana plants and the mango leaves to the doors, and all the neighbors would know, oh, Sai Baba. He was not so much known in those days. Swami, they would say, oh, this Sai Baba is coming to doctor's house. So they are decorating the house. So this gentleman and his mother had come few days before the Akhanda Bhajan to our house. And when he came, he had this leukoderma patches, white patches all over him. So his mother brought him and she said, I believe Satya Sai Baba is coming to your house. Yes, my father said he's coming for the bhajan on Thursday. So we knew that he was a very good singer. So she said, can you please tell him to bless my son? We want to get our son married, but because of all these white patches, none of the girls are marrying him because he has got these leukoderma patches. He's a very good boy. He's well educated. He has a good job and all that. Typical Indian style arranged marriage she was talking about. So my father said, I cannot intervene on behalf of somebody, but your son is a good singer. Why don't you tell him to come to Akhanda Bhajan and sing in the bhajans? And if Swami wants to see him, he will see him, he said. So they asked a lot. My father said, no, I cannot intervene on behalf of others. Swami knows everything. He will take care of your son. The mother was not very happy, and neither was the boy. She said, oh, we are asking for some help. He's staying in your house. You don't want to help us. My father apologized. They went away. So the Akanda Bhajan had started, and now at 10 o'clock in the night, when Swami in this rain, we went to that hall, this boy was singing. He had his eyes closed and he was singing this bhajan. Many people may be familiar in West Indies. Darshan dikao mere Sai Nanda Lala. That bhajan. Please give darshan, O Sai. That is the, please give me the darshan. Darshan dikao mere Sai Nanda Lala. That bhajan he was singing. He was a beautiful, very good singer. He had his eyes closed. He did not realize Swami has come at 10 o'clock in the night. I had gone and sat on the ladies' side. Swami said, go and sit there in the front. Swami came from the men's side and he stood in front of this boy. I still have this image, his hands behind his back, swaying to the music and the devotion of this boy. And he sang the full song, finished, opened his eyes, and Swami is standing right in front of him. And he is singing Darsha Dikao, give me your darshan, O Sai. So he just looked up at Swami with shock. I was sitting right next to the aisle. I had come and sat in the front, and everybody is looking at this boy because Swami was clearly standing there to bless till when he finished. He just bent down and touched the boy's forehead. And in that split second, every single patch on his body disappeared. He didn't realize that. Everybody is watching with shock, but the boy was just folding his hands. Swami blessed him, looked at me and said, go back to the car. I got up and went to the car. Swami came back to the car, sat it, we came back home. Excuse me. So we came to the car and we sat down, and it was like a stunned silence, my father, myself, because we had seen something that was so miraculous. Then I would always be very chatty. And I said, Swami, why did you have to come in the dark night at 10:30 in the night to bless this boy? He has been singing all day. In the morning also he sang. He sang in the afternoon. He's singing now in the night. You could have blessed him throughout the day. Why at night, 10 o'clock, when it is pouring cats and dogs, you have come now? I asked him like that in the car. Swami laughed and he said, yes, since the morning, he has been thinking, when I sing, I hope Swami will come near me to bless. When I sing, maybe he will come and remove my patches. When I sing, maybe he will give me vibhuti. That is all the boy has been thinking about. But at 10 o'clock, he had no hope. He thought Swami has gone away. Anyway, he's not going to come. And in that time, his thought, words, and actions were in harmony. And he was just singing to me with love, saying, oh Sai, when are you going to give me darshan? And that bhakti dragged me in the rain to bless him. That incident happened in Gayan Samaja in 1967. This boy was blessed. He got married. And Brother Faiz, the most beautiful thing was in 2003, when Swami was giving me a interview, there was a couple in the interview room, somebody we didn't know. And while we were talking, Swami said to that boy, don't you want to say thank you to this lady? So that gentleman looked at me and he said, his question was, why should I say thank you? We were just in the interview room. And Swami said, it was her father who brought me to that music hall, Dr. Padmanabhan, and you lost those patches. You are the same person. She came with me in the car. Ask her. Say thank you to her. It was her father who brought me to your bhajan when you were singing. So much, much later in 2003, I met this man again. He was married himself and a much older man, of course, with children and grandchildren. And Swami reintroduced me to this man. So what bhakti can do, the power of prayer. And when our minds are not in harmony with our words and our actions, what it cannot do, that also I learned in this incident, Brother Faiz. Sai Ram.
Sister Geetha, that was, I'm really lost for words. The compassion of Mother Sai. It's so touching, so beautiful. My God. And what a beautiful lesson when you let go of everything and sing only for Him. Then he
Yes.
comes. When you've totally given up and surrendered, then he appears to bless you. Oh my God. What a thank you so much for sharing that. It was so beautiful. And how lucky, how fortunate you have been, throughout your entire life, and Swami nudging you and telling you, come, you have to go too in the car. What a blessing.
Yes, I was very, very fortunate. I Every day I thank him for his grace. And once I thanked him in person also, I said, Swami, thank you for being so much intertwined with everything. And he said, I didn't give you a free lunch. Now you're sharing it with all my devotees, he said. So I'm very, very happy to do that uh, for all my brothers and sisters so that they can enjoy his divine Leela. Thank you.
Well, we are certainly enjoying it, and you're taking us with you along this side journey, and we're experiencing a fraction of what you would have experienced under his watchful guidance. So, Sister Geeta, it leads me to another question. What
Yes.
is it like? In fact, when you were narrating that Satya Sai Baba is staying at your home 2, 3, 4 days, I am trying to envisage this omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient God who has come armed with the 16 facets of divinity in a human form, staying at your home. It's mind-boggling, to conceive a God in human form is staying at your home. What is that experience like day to day? And I remember reading in Dr. Hislop's book, he said one day Swami just popped down into his room and said, Hislop, can I borrow your razor? So he says sometimes you could so take him for granted as a physical person
Yeah.
than divinity manifesting in front of you. Please share a little bit about that experience of having God in your home. How did you relate to him in terms of him being in the house?
Yeah, I mean, it was a wonderful experience. But to really tell you, as a child, he came till I was almost like 13 or 4. So I have very good memories of him staying in our house. The beauty of it is he became a part of us. Like you said, he became a part of us. My mother used to have a little stool, what we call it's a cane chair, I should call it, but it has no armrests or anything. It's a little, in India, you find these little cane modas, we call it. She used to have two of those in the kitchen. Whenever she used to make some coffee or anything, we all used to just sit there on that little seat that she had in the kitchen and chat with my mother. So that used to be in the kitchen. So when Swami came, she would remove it and put it away, because he would be all over the house, actually. I mean, so, I, I remember, once I was in this phase when I was reading these novels, I was a teenager and I was reading all these Barbara Cartland and all these romance novels that was there in my bookshelf. And he would always come into my room about something or the other. I mean, on my desk, many times he would have lunch on my desk where I used to do my schoolwork. Many times he would say, I will eat in Geetha's room on the desk. So I remember that every time Swami would come, I would have this tremendous task of switching all the books and putting all the Enid Blyton books when I was younger and all these silly books that I was reading in the back and put Satya Sai Speaks in front, in the bookshelf. Because if Swami comes into my room, I didn't want him to see those novels. There would be all these Satya Sai Speaks. And I remember every time he would come into my room, he would take 3 or 4 of the Satya Sai Speaks and he would take it out and say, oh, so these are the novels you're reading now, and put the Satya Sai Speaks back. So there was no hiding from him. So, I would always be dreading about him removing the Satya Sai Speaks to discover the books behind. So that was one aspect. The other aspect was He was so sweet as a part of our family. He would ask my mother. He was the most perfect guest, I must say. As soon as he arrived, he would, relax a little bit, have his dinner, and then he would ask my mother, what time do you all get up and have coffee in the morning? As South Indians, we all have coffee in the morning. And and my mother would say, it doesn't matter, Swami. As soon as you get up, I will have your coffee ready. It doesn't matter when. I said, no, 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 that is different. What time do you and Padmanabh have coffee every morning? So she would say around 6:15 or something. So Swami would say, okay. And believe it or not, his room door would not open till 6:15. But we would know that he's up because the room light would be on. Till 6:15, he would not even come out of the room, and then he would come out and come into the kitchen and sit on this stool that he would pull out of the prayer room where my mother would put it every time and sit there on it. And my mother would say, no, Swami, if you sit in the sofa, I will bring the coffee. I'll bring the coffee. I'll say, no, why? Should I not come into your kitchen? Don't you feel that I'm a part of your family? Why are you sending me to the living room when your husband and daughter and your son sit here when they have coffee just to chat with you? Why don't you want me to sit? Don't you want me to be a part of your life? Am I a guest? Am I not your very own family? So that was one aspect where he would be behind my mother to see how much decoction she's putting, how much milk she's putting, how much sugar. So he would watch her, and my mother would be trembling while making the coffee, thinking she'll probably make the worst coffee in her life with Swami right over her shoulder asking her questions. But then he would sit on the stool and say, Padmanabh, come on, you also sit on this stool. Both of us will drink coffee together at 6:15. So he would be a part of like that. But at the same time, we always knew that as much as he was a part of us, there was this divine aura with him that we could sense, even as children. And we knew that he knew everything that we did. So to give you an example of that, once he was staying with us, and my aunt, a couple of the aunts would actually come and stay in our house to help my mother to cook and everything for Swami, because breakfast, lunch, and thing, they would make a lot of dishes, different things that they thought that Swami would like. And my cousin and I would be banished to the room when we were kids. I was 10 and he was 13 or something, and we would giggle and laugh and make noise. And sometimes Swami would give interviews in the house to other people. So my parents would say, you have to stay in the bedroom and play over there. You cannot come in the living room and play and make a whole lot of noise. So my cousin and I would be banished off to the room sometimes to play board games. So Swami would come regularly and insist on joining us on these games. In the first couple of times, we said, okay. But we found that Swami would win all the board games, whether we played Chutes and Ladders, Ludo, whatever it was. So one particular time he came and said, oh, my cousins, told my cousin, you move over. I want to play with the three of you. It was Snakes and Ladders. In India, it's called. Here, I think it's called Chutes and Ladders. So I was very naughty. And I said, no, Swami, we don't want you to play with us. I said, I must have been 8, 10, whatever, 9. So Swami said, why? Why are you being mean like that and saying I can't play with you? So I said, no, because the dice does whatever you ask it to do, and you always get the right numbers. You're always climbing the ladders, but you never go down the snakes. It's snakes and ladders. You go up the ladder to reach 100, or you go down the snakes and come back to the bottom of the board, which is how you lose. And I said, you never go down the snakes. The dice puts the number that you want. So we don't want to play with you because you always win. So Swami said, no, I will play like you all. No doing any divine leela. So we very reluctantly said, okay. And he started to play, and he went up the ladder a few times. He came down on the snake a few times. So we thought, oh, okay, he's playing normally now. The dice is not listening to him. And he came all the way up to 98. On 99, there's that really long snake which comes all the way down to 2. So he comes up to 98. Couple of times before that, he has gotten a 1. So we are saying, okay, if he gets a 1 now, he's going to land on that snake, right? And he So see, I haven't done anything. I've played just like you. And he rolls the dice, gets two, and lands on 100. And I'm like, you've done that again. And then Swami very sweetly, there is a lesson to everything that Swami does. He said, see, Bangaru, if you hold my name as the dice, this is the game of life. It's full of snakes and it's full of ladders. Sometimes you go up, sometimes you lose, sometimes you come to 99, sometimes in life you come to 2. You go up. But if you hold my name as the dice, and if you roll it, it will take you through the life of snakes and ladders, and you can play this game of life with me in your hands, rolling the dice. He said, play like that, you will also win. He said, and he left the room. So this was my Swami in our house, sitting on the moda or that little cane stool, drinking coffee with us, asking my mother how she makes such good coffee. The next moment, taking out the books to see which novels I have hidden behind my Satya Sai Speaks. The third moment, playing snakes and ladders. And in the fourth moment, sitting in the living room and giving us the most precious gems of his discourses, how to lead our life in a very small setting, how to lead our lives. What is life? What are these snakes and these ladders? How every life has it, but how we go about playing that game is the most important thing. So we had the Divine Guru who gave us beautiful messages. We had the Divine Mother who joked and looked at the books behind, but we didn't get in trouble. And then there was also the mother to my mother who appreciated her coffee. You make coffee very nicely, Kamlamma. I enjoyed your coffee. And also be the perfect guest and not get up before 6:15 and come out and disturb the host because she said we have coffee at 6:15. So he was the most beautiful mother, father, friend, guru to me, Brother Files.
Sister Geeta, thank you so much. This is I it's even unbelievable when you it is so wonderful. Oh my God. This is God that has come down in a physical form so that he can maintain kinship with humanity and then raise us to the level from animal to divine. Oh my God. And as you
Yes,
rightly said, how fortunate we are to be
yes.
born in the same age of the Avatar, to walk the same earth, to be
Mm,
selected by him to be contemporaries. And he says a chance like this may not ever come your way again. Don't lose this golden opportunity of holding on to me and attaining your life's purpose of self realization. What a blessing! And your sharing drives home that point so much that we should not lose a single moment in any other thing except to worship, to love, and to serve Him. Thank you, Sister Geeta. Sister Geeta, would you like to have some water before we continue?
yes, please. Thank you. So just see, I had one interesting thing that I had, but I don't know where I have it. It's all right. But Swami will make me speak what he wants me to speak. Thank you.
So, Sister Geeta,
Yes,
on the Awake, Unite, and Inspire series, since we
yes.
started it, and on a weekly radio program on Sai Baba that we've had in Trinidad and Tobago for the last 30 years, every week, 1 hour per week on a national radio station. We shared the birth, the mission, the teachings of Bhagwan. And recently, within the last couple of years, we have been taking a particular segment to focus on animal seva and environmental seva, which is very, very close to Swami's heart because when you look at his life and how he treated animals, the dogs, the lions, Sai Gita, the Gokulam, it is a beautiful lesson for us that everything is filled with divinity and we must serve creation and the animals with that sacred intention, just as if God is present in everything. And I know there's a beautiful incident that happened with Swami and the buffalo. And I think this would reinforce the importance of us striving to serve God in all his various forms. Please share with us.
Oh, thank you. This is a story. I shouldn't say, Swami said I shouldn't call it stories. He said a story can be an imagination of somebody's writing or mind, but these are experiences. And he said it is his story. So it's history, he told me once. So here I am. This is, of course, a beautiful experience. Thank you for asking me, Brother Faiz. This was, in my young days, whenever Swami, sometimes he used to go on holidays, sometimes in the summer, he used to take us along with him as well. And this one particular time, Swami, one of his devotees, I'm not sure who, had given Swami a beautiful British style bungalow in the Horsley Hills, actually, which is not very far from Bangalore. Yeah, I think it's about 5 hours or something. And one summer, Swami said, okay, everybody be ready tomorrow. I'm going to Horsley Hills. All of you come. So this was during the summer school holidays. So we were thrilled, we had gone to other places, but this was a longer trip. It was supposed to be for 8 or 10 days. So we were thrilled. And this was also a hill station. So it'll be cooler, it's not hot like Puttaparthi or any other place. So we were very excited and we went to Horsley Hills. We were about 7 or 8 cars, some family members, some devotees that Swami took along with Professor Kasturi and others. We all went there and had the most wonderful time. It was a beautiful bungalow. We were all in the same house as Swami. Swami had his room. We had the neighboring rooms. The kitchen was there. Our aunts and everybody, the elders, cooked. And every day we were having a lovely time. We would have bhajan. Swami, when it was a small group of maybe 22, 25 people, that's all, not a large group. Swami would talk to everybody. He would take us all for walks. Sometimes he would just take the men for walks. Sometimes he would tell everybody to come along. Once I remember we had a picnic on the grass. It was a full moon day. So, in the evening, there was a picnic. So we spent these beautiful 10 days. Now, there was one problem there. There was a water scarcity. So they had, drinking water and everything. But if you wanted to use, we were so many of us, 25 of us, to wash all the clothes of everybody, wash all the dishes that was being used to cook so much food. There was a little bit of a water scarcity there. And in that bungalow, the owner owned 2 buffaloes, water buffaloes thing. And those buffaloes would walk about 3 miles downhill where there was a very big well, actually. So one person who used to look after the buffaloes would go and they would draw water from the well. And on the backs of these buffaloes with a rope, 2 huge, vessels were tied to the backs of the buffaloes with a rope. And they would fill these vessels, these dishes or these huge kind of a storing thing with water. And the 2 buffaloes would bring the water back. And there was a tank here in the house outside. And they would fill that tank up with water. So every day these buffaloes would go back and forth to that well based on how much water there was in the tank. These guys would go bring the water and fill it up. And we knew that was happening because they would say, please use the water carefully because the more water you use, the more trips the buffalo has to make, to go and bring the 2 of them. So we were careful, but there were so many of us and the water would get used and nobody really bothered. The buffaloes were doing their job. We were all busy enjoying the divine presence, the leelas, the talks, the bhajans, the picnics, the walks and everything. So the 10 days went, in a flash. And the last day, Swami said, tomorrow morning, 5:30 a.m., everybody be ready. We are getting back to Bangalore. And of course, those of us who have traveled with Swami, we know if Swami says be ready by 5:30, we better be ready by 4:30 because he will leave as he says. And if you're not ready, you will be left behind. So we were all ready and everything. And the cars were all parked in front of that portico. And everybody got in to their cars. And Kasturi Garu got in with Swami in Swami's car. And Swami was the last person. He was making sure that everybody had gotten in so that we could leave together like a convoy, because the lunch was being carried in these cars and Swami would stop somewhere on the wayside to have a picnic there. So he was making sure of all that. And then as everybody got into the car, Swami, instead of getting into the car, suddenly sort of didn't get in and started to walk towards the back of this place, of this house. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, now why is he going in the back? Because everybody keeps the front very clean. That's what Swami said. You keep the front very clean, but the inside has to be also clean. You see, that's the place that God is going to look. So, like that, Swami started to go to the back. They were all like, oh my God, what is there in the back? Did we clean it and all that? Swami went. As soon as Swami went, Kasturi Garu got out of his car and started to walk on the other side of the house because he was curious to see what Swami was up to. Swami didn't call him. So since Swami didn't call him, he went to the other side. I was a kid. Before the elders could catch me, I jumped out of the car because I was equally curious as to why Swami is going to the back. I went from one side. Kasturi Garu came from one side. We both met at the back of the house near the bush. And he said, don't make any noise, Swami. We'll get in. Both of us will get into trouble for coming, So we both stood behind a bush. And Swami, we saw walking towards the shed where these two buffaloes were housed, not very far from where we were standing. And he walked in there, these two buffaloes were there. And Swami went there and started to talk to these buffaloes as though just like I'm talking to you, as though they were human and they were responding to him, which they were probably. We, of course, could not understand. He said to these two beautiful buffaloes, to these buffaloes, I should say very beautifully, he said, thank you very much, Bangaru. Dunnapota, he said, hey, Dunnapota means water buffalo. You have done so much work for my devotees. Every day you have gone and brought water. You have done a lot of seva for me. You have done very well. I'm so happy. I'm very happy. Anandanga undindi. Swami said it was very nice. It was, and we could see, we were at very close near the door of that. There was a bush and we were both standing, and we could see the tears just rolling down the eyes of these two buffaloes as Swami talked to them. And Swami started to pat the cheeks of these two buffaloes, one on either side, and said, don't cry, don't cry. I'll come again in the summer. Don't cry. I'll be back soon. And he materialized Vibhuti and put it on the forehead of these two buffaloes, patted them on their backs and said, don't cry. I'll be back soon. I'm very happy with all the seva that you did for my bhakta, for my devotees. I'll be back soon. And he patted. And he came out and he said, hey, you two, why are you hiding there? We both got caught. I told you to sit in the car. Why are you both here? Go and sit in the car. He kind of scolded us. And we got back into the car and we came back. And many years later, even after I came to the US, many times Swami would say, whenever I gave a talk, I would share this buffalo story. And Swami would say, you saw it so many years ago and you told the buffalo story in Texas, you told it in California. Swami would tell me the places. And he would say that, see how these animals also are yearning to do seva for the Lord. When the animals which cannot speak, which does not have the intelligence that we have, if they want to serve the Lord, how much more we human beings should serve the Lord, and how much more loving we should be towards all these creatures in whom he exists within. And I remember asking Swami, how did those buffaloes understand? Swami, they were crying. You were saying, don't cry. He says, they can understand. It's a heart-to-heart communication, Bangara, heart-to-heart, love of the heart. So that is the wonderful experience I had with these buffaloes in Horsley Hills, along with Kasturi Garu. I think he has written in some books. I have spoken of it in several talks of mine. And Swami used to be very happy about that. He would say, oh, you told the buffalo story. Nicely you told. Once he told me, I told the story, but I never told the part where Swami came and scolded Kasturi Garu and me. He said, you told the story, but you didn't say that you got into trouble with me. He mentioned once in the interview. But he's omnipresent. He's everywhere. He knows every moment what we are doing. Side up.
Very, very, very beautiful. What a powerful lesson for all of us, that we have to regard everything as a manifestation of himself and treated with that reverence, that sincerity, and that love. And Swami said you shared it in Texas and different parts. No, you've shared it in West Indies.
Yes, I yes, if I could physically see him, he would have said that you spoke in West Indies. In fact, I got into trouble once somewhere else for drinking water in the middle of my talk. He said, you should drink before you talk, not in the middle of the talk, and distract everybody. But he's omnipresent. That's the point that he wants to make, that I know every moment I'm with you. It is for us to see that. And it's wonderful to hear that you are doing so much of work for the environment there, Brother Faiz. It's really very good that you're doing that. Yeah.
Thank you, Sister Geeta. Yes, there's a concerted effort now by devotees, and in the weekly radio program, and as well as the Awake, Unite, and Inspire, we continue to implore, encourage, inspire people to do that wonderful seva. And Swami is the perfect exemplar of that, as so
Yes.
beautifully shared in that not story but real life incident. So, Sister
Yeah.
Geeta, another request has come to share the incident or the experience with the phone,
Ooh.
which many people feel, they are mesmerized, they're inspired by that, and they would like you to share, please, again. And just to share, there are many people who have gone on YouTube, they've listened to you, they've listened to your experiences. But the West Indian devotees may not have had that exposure or experience. So when you are sharing, know that some devotees are going to be hearing this for the very first time.
Thank you, Brother Faiz. I was wondering because that is one experience that I have narrated several times, no doubt. But for me, even though I narrated to you the bhajan thing that I heard when I was 3 years old, or the snakes and ladders, or whatever it is, one maya of the mind is, when somebody is there with you all the time in your house, or we are there in his house, you tend to take even him for granted sometimes. And especially as a child, you don't realize what you have till you are mature enough to understand. But this particular incident that you are mentioning happened when I was 8. My a lot of my experiences, of course, a lot has happened later as well, but in a different way. But a lot of these kind of experiences, which are really what we say awesome, happen because, as you know, in the 60s, 50s, and 60s, that was like the teaching and the Mahima period of Swami. So his visiting cards were coming out in every direction. So the visiting cards in the form of these leelas. So this particular thing has a tremendous impact on me, this particular experience, because I think it was then that I realized that this Swami who comes and makes me sit on his lap, and once I remember whining or complaining that he's constantly just materializing this Paris peppermint, it used to be called, this little green wrappered candy in India. And Swami would materialize that for us as kids. And I remember complaining to Swami saying, you're always materializing this boring candy. Why not Cadbury chocolate or something like that? So you take, I took him as a part, very easily as a part of me. All these miracles did not seem like miracles. This was Swami, my Swami. He could do anything. But this particular incident, there was an aunt, my mother's aunt. Her name was Savitrama. She lived in Puttaparthi actually, and she developed cataract in her eyes. And at that time, in Puttaparthi, they still didn't have facilities for doing surgeries, cataract surgeries, and all. Super specialty hospital was not there. The general hospital was there, but they still didn't have many facilities yet. Now, of course, Prashanthi Nilayam, it is so wonderful. Everything anywhere in the world is there. And of course, most importantly, our Swami, his physical energy is there because he was born there, he lived there, he spread his message there. So that is the holiest of holy places that we have. But at that time, this cataract surgery could not be done there. So when my parents had gone, Swami told this aunt, my mother's aunt, she lived in Prasanthi Nilayam. He said, you take her to Bangalore and get her eye surgery done. Now, this aunt did not want to leave Swami and come at all. She said, no, 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 let my eyes go, but I don't want to go to Bangalore to any surgery, Swami. You can look after me. But Swami insisted, no, no, it was just a simple cataract. You go, and he gave her Vibhuti and sent her off to Bangalore. My father was a pretty well-known doctor. He easily got an appointment for the surgery. The doctor checked her out, said it's a cataract surgery, and they fixed the appointment about a couple of weeks later. Now, this aunt had brought the vibhuti that Swami had given her materialized, and every day she's busily putting it over her eyes and in her throat and over her eyes and all. She finished all that vibhuti that Swami had given much before the surgery was scheduled. So she started to tell my father, oh, I don't have any vibhuti. You have set up this surgery. She had no faith in any doctor. Her faith was in Swami. So she said, this doctor is going to make me blind, you take me back to Puttaparthi, I need more vibhuti. So my father was a very busy a dental surgeon, and he said, no, no, no. And I told you, the journeys were so long and difficult. So he said, look, Swami himself has sent you. He has blessed you. He has given you vibhuti. Don't worry, I have other vibhuti packets. You get the surgery done. And I don't. She was not interested in other vibhuti packets. She wanted Swami materialize for her. She was very close to Swami. In fact, when Swami was much younger, she used to cook for Swami when he was a child and everything. So she said no. Anyway, my father kind of got a little impatient with her, I think, and said, no, 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 I cannot take you. Swami has blessed you and sent you. After the surgery, I'll take you. You are quite old now. I can't make this long journey back to Parthi, because if she gets a cold or some infection, then they can't do the surgery. And Swami will get upset with me. He told me, you bring her back after the surgery. So I'm going to do it. So that particular evening, my mother and father had some meeting, and they both left, and she and I were sitting in our living room of my father's house. And she was bitterly complaining about my father. I think every generation, she was saying, look at these youngsters, they have no respect for the elders. All the complaints that every generation has. I asked him to take your father. And I was very gleefully listening, because she was complaining about my dad. And I was gleefully listening to her complaints. And suddenly the telephone in our house rang. In those days in India, there was one telephone in one living room, not like nowadays where everybody has 3 phones in different parts, cell phones and everything. So the phone rang. I was about 9 years or 8.5 or something. I went there and I picked up the phone and I said, hello. And they said, trunk call from Bukkapatnam. Trunk call is a long distance call. In India, it was called a trunk call. And it was coming from Bukkapatnam. So I said, what, Bukkapatnam? I was 8.5 years. I knew Bukkapatnam on the way to Parthi. I said, hello, hello. But the operator went off the line, and suddenly Swami's voice came. And he said, Geetha Ma, he said. I recognized Swami. And I said, Swami, I said. He said, this is Swami. Is that old woman complaining? He said. So I kept my mouth closed, because even at that age, I knew that especially on an elder, I cannot complain to Swami. So I kept quiet. So he said, is she complaining about Padmanabh? And I kept quiet. I said, she's sitting here, Swami, I said. But safer answer. So he said, oh, I see. Give her the caller and give her the phone. Because Swami knew where the phone is in our house, because he used to stay with her. Call her and give her the phone. So she came up. This is an old lady from a village who didn't have much education, doesn't know how to use the phone and all that. Elderly lady. She came there and loudly she said, hello, hello. She's shouting so loudly, Swami can hear without the phone also. Hello, hello, she said. Then Swami said, why are you complaining or something, Swami said. And she launched into this complaint. I told this Padmanabhan Swami to bring me. I need vibhuti. All the vibhuti you gave is over. The doctor is going to make me blind. She was convinced that the ophthalmologist was going to make her blind. He's going to make me blind. What is the use of this human life if I cannot see you and all that? She was complaining. Then Swami listened very patiently, and then he said, okay, you call Geetha. I'll talk to her. So she said, come here, come here. He wants to talk to you. I think he's going to tell your father to take me to Puttaparthi back. I don't want this surgery. You listen properly. You have to tell your father, she said. I took the phone. Swami didn't say anything. Very nicely, he said, is there a newspaper or any paper? He said, actually, is there any paper there? He asked me. I looked, and on the coffee table that day's Deccan Herald, that was the newspaper. This is there. So I said, Swami, Deccan Herald is there. So he said, you bring it to the phone. So I brought the paper. He said, you put the phone on that. I put the phone on the newspaper, thinking, why Swami, he's talking, but he's asking me to put the phone on the newspaper. It's one of those black phones. You may remember, Brother Faiz, those black phones with the receiver and the thing. I put the phone down, and there was a shh sound coming out of it. And through the bottom of the receiver, a whole mound of vibhuti just came onto the newspaper, like a nice big amount, like a whole cup full, I can say, just onto the news. I was so shocked when I saw it, and I didn't do anything. And then very slowly, it stopped. And then very slowly, I picked up the phone. The phone was all covered with vibhuti. And I said, hello. And Swami in Telugu said, Vachinda, did you get it? I said, Swami, vibhuti has come on the thing. He said, yes, I know, Bangaru. You fold it up and you give it to the old lady for her surgery. She wants vibhuti, he said. I said, oh my goodness, this whole vibhuti has come like this. And then very sweetly he said, I know Padmanabh and Kamlamma are not there. You tell them Swami's Ashirvadam, blessings are there with them. You tell your brother Jagadish, my blessings are there. You be a good girl, he told me. And he just put the phone down, and the phone went. And I was in such shock, because who expects the Bangalore telephones to suddenly produce a mound of vibhuti on the Deccan Herald newspaper? So she took it and she said, oh, he sent me my vibhuti. See, he is my Swami. I know that he will send me my vibhuti. He won't send me to the surgery and all, she said. Little later, my parents came home. They explained the whole story. And then, of course, for a few days, I was the heroine of the story. All the relatives came home. Repeatedly, I told this story to everybody. Vibhuti came, this came, that came. They all said, oh, you're so fortunate. You saw this. So it went on for a few days, the excitement of it. Then the excitement stopped. And that is when the mind becomes at peace and the senses are not exciting, my intellect started to work, even though I was only 8 years old. I said, what is it that I experienced? How can vibhuti come from the telephone? And I know that Bukkapatnam is some kilometers away from Prashanti Nilayam. There is one post office there. And in that post office, there is a telephone, because there was no telephone in Prashanti Nilayam at that time. So Swami has come from Prashanti Nilayam, crossed the Chitravati river, come to Bukkapatnam, come to the post office, and he has made a phone call for this old lady. What is it that made him come? I started to question. And of course, slowly the answers occurred. That the devotion, the prayer, and the love of this woman could draw him from his rooms in Prashanti Nilayam, cross the Chitravati river in a bullock cart, come to Bukkapatnam, go to the post office and make a phone call from there, so that this old lady, who did not believe in the doctors of the world or the relatives that come and go in this life, but her only anchor was that Sai. When she called him with that devotion, he came through the telephone in the form of that vibhuti to give her the assurance, don't worry, I am there for you. That is why Swami says, you take one step, I'll take 100 towards you. That I understood in this instance. And I said, my goodness, this Swami, we are asking for Paris peppermint and Cadbury's chocolate and ring and chain, and Swami, make me pass my exam. I didn't study well in the exam. We are asking for all these trivial things when he has come here to grant us the greatest of the great, his very presence, his very love for us. So that I realized, Brother Faiz, with this incident, with this experience, that what good fortune it is that we have, all of us, all devotees all over the world, we have experienced him in our own way, each one of us. Even those who have not had that physical interaction, if you ask them, they have experienced. When they have connected with love, they have experienced. If they didn't experience, that means they are yet to connect. They are yet to connect. That's all the answer. Saira.
Truly, truly beautiful and inspiring sharing, Sister Geeta. And it reminds me so much of Swami when he says, very few of you have come to ask of me what I have come to give. Many of you come to ask of me petty tinsel and trash.
Yes.
So, but he is so indulgent and loving. He says, I give you what you want, so you could want what I have come to give.
That's right.
And Sister Geeta, some of the things we ask for when we go to the wish fulfilling tree, you can get it in stores. You can buy it off the counter, you know. So why ask for coffee powder when you can
Yes.
ask for God Himself, and then everything else will be added on to you.
Mm.
So what a beautiful message. Thank you so much for
Bye.
sharing.
Brother Faiz, wonderful, wonderful talking to you and all of the devotees there. Bye
So Sister
now.
Geeta, what does Sai Baba mean to you today?
You know, he is my everything. He has been my mother and shown me the most beautiful love that even my own mother, I don't know, but he has shown me love and I have loved him. He has been my mother. He has been the most loving father, but a disciplinarian father too. He has not let me off the hook when I have made mistakes. He has pulled me up. He has told me you have to correct yourself. This is not the way to go about it. He, even in worldly matters, not only in spiritual matters, even in worldly matters, he's been a disciplinarian, but he has been a loving father. He has been the most wonderful Jagat Guru in everything, from the way I wear my sari, or the way I put on my hairband, from there to what is it that you, for what reason are you born in this human body? At least intellectually, I have understood it. I am just like everybody else in this journey, trying to practice and become better and better, and hopefully one day. But he has been the most wonderful guru who can make the highest concepts so simple that he brings it down to just love everybody. That's enough. Help everybody. That's enough. Love all, serve all. And help ever, hurt never. He makes the most big, highest Vedic truths, highest spiritual truths down to such simple. So he has been the greatest guru. But above all, which I value very much, he has been my best friend. He has laughed with me. He has joked with me. He has teased me. He has allowed me to tease him sometimes with full of respect and love only. But he has allowed me to joke with him. And he has been my best friend. He has sometimes been, uh, you know, in conspiracy with me so that we would do something without my parents knowing. And he has threatened to say, I will tell them if you do this again. So he has been everything bundled into one. I cannot imagine my life even for a single moment when I don't think of him or him not being there. He's my everything. I guess that is my answer. I don't know how else to answer it.
Thank you so much. That was so wonderful, so loving, so sincere. And Sister Geeta, one final question in this wonderful part one of your divine sharing, and Swami will decide the part two. But my final question to you on this wonderful divine interview is, why is it important for us as devotees of Bhagwan, spiritual aspirants, to remain connected to the physical Prashanti Nilayam?
So the physical Prashanti Nilayam, to me, I can speak for my own personal feeling. I cannot speak for everybody. It is a symbol of his presence. And the minute you set foot in there, you can see his presence everywhere. When we become what he wants us to be, when we become from Manava to Madhava, When we become from human to divine, then it will not matter where we are. Because everybody will be Swami. I won't be talking to Brother Faiz, it will be Swami that I am discussing with. When we reach that level of consciousness, then it will not matter where we are. But till such time, since we are still very human, still we are on this spiritual journey, still we have our egos. I am Geetha, that is Brother Faiz, this is so and so, that is so and so, this is America, that is India. Still we have those boxes. So as long as we are in those boxes, we have to connect to something which is extremely divine and powerful, because that is where he took birth. That is where he decided to spend his whole life and give his message from there. That is where he promised his mother that he would be always. And that is where the whole world came to see him. He did not go, other than to Uganda, he did not go from country to country. Everybody came there at his feet. So to me, I feel that symbolizes a divine energy there. And also it is well known by scientists and others that there is a divine aura that spreads around Prasanthi Nilayam because of his physical presence, and now his human physical presence is still there. His body is still there. And that gives a certain amount of energy to people. You are a Muslim, Brother Faiz. For you, as venerable as it is to go to Mecca, as for a Hindu, it is to go to Kashi, for somebody who goes to Vatican, those places symbolize something. So till we reach that self-realized level where everything becomes one, we all need these things. And for that reason, Prasanthi Nilayam is the very source where he has spoken, he has lived, continues to be there. Not that he is not there everywhere. I gave you already so many examples of his omnipresence. He's everywhere. But why is it that we are not seeing him everywhere? We have not reached that position. So till we get there, I think we all need to be connected to Prasanthi Nilayam, because when we enter those premises, immediately we will see. Even those who are going for the first time, if they have seen videos, they can imagine Swami used to come out of here, this gate. Swami used to stand here. Swami used to talk to the boys. Swami used to go in the mandir. So that visual experience uplifts you. That visual experience, especially now, even with the bhajans, when we see the video, we are immediately transported. I remember that is one part of it. That is the spiritual part of me thinking. But for me, physically, that is my home. I grew up on the sands of Puttaparthi. I used to climb the trees where the East Prashanti block is. And Swami used to say, you monkey, get down from those guava trees. I used to climb the guava tree there. For me, Prasanthi Nilayam is my home. Personally, I could never imagine myself being disconnected. But from a spiritual thing, till I reach a place when I can see everything as Prasanthi Nilayam, I feel we have to be connected to Prasanthi Nilayam till we are able to reach. After that, Swami says, you and I are one. Then there is no difference. But right now, we still have that difference. Unfortunately, we have so many differences. So we need that anchor to go. Just like in a house, we all have a special area which we call the altar. We keep Swami's picture there, or we keep something where we worship. Why? If we believe that Swami is everywhere, why do we need an altar? Why do we need a prayer room? Why do we need to go to the temple? All those questions. Why do you need to go to the mosque? Everything comes. But till we reach that time, we feel connected to Swami when we go there. So for that reason, Prasanthi Nilayam symbolizes the place where Swami just extended his love to every human being, animal, and tree that came. So I think that connection for us is very important.
Thank you so much. That was such a beautiful explanation of why we should remain connected to Prashanti. The mere fact that the avatar walked and had his being for 85 years,
Yes.
every item, every plant, every stone, every particle pulsated with that divinity, as you have said so beautifully, with the Muslims in Mecca and the Hindus in Kashi and the Christians in the Vatican. It holds that reverence and that spiritual energy. Thank you so much, Sister Geeta, for sharing. I just want to beg your indulgence for just 2 to 3 more minutes. You know, Swami has said he's come to create a better society through the practicing of human values. His greatest miracle is the miracle of personal transformation that takes place in the hearts of millions of devotees across the world. And he says, educare is the Veda of the 21st century. From your experience, you've been an SSC teacher, you've been a teacher in your profession, you've interacted so much with the society, especially children. For those of us who want to create a better society, what can you share that each individual can practice to make their contribution to make the world a better place?
So, Swami, in so many discourses, has explained this. First and foremost, having been born as the human being itself is the greatest boon, because we have the intelligence to understand, we have the ability to control our senses. So, this human birth is indeed a gift of God. So, having received that, we have to put it, Swami says, in many ways, at least from what I've heard him say to me personally, to my children, to my husband, is that first and foremost, you are in this human form. You have to transform yourself before you are able to tell anybody anything. And of course, it is not something that happens overnight. It happens over a period of time through your own self-effort and through listening to the words of your master, your Lord, your Guru. For all of us, it is Swami. And then trying to put it into practice. So the first and foremost, we have to practice at least one little thing that Swami tells us. Of course, we are all struggling and we are all slowly climbing that ladder. It's not easy, but we have to put the effort, because Swami says, the minute you put the effort, my blessings are there and I'll help you push you up a little bit more. So that is the personal transformation that we have to try. But having again been born as human beings, supposing we are in the family, then we have a duty as parents towards our children. How are we going to bring them up? We have to bring them up. Swami says very clearly, not just children who become consumers all the time. What can I get? What can I get? What can I do? Which level can I climb? Which best thing can I acquire? But he says that as parents, you have to set the example of simplicity, of sealing on desires, of individual yourself, show the children that you're practicing. So you have a job as a parent. Then what is your other role? You go out into society and you work. You have a profession. In your profession, you practice your, you are ethical, you have integrity, you try to be helpful to everybody in your profession. So as another person, from your self-knowledge, then being a family person in the way you bring up your children, and then in your own profession, you start working the way Swami says, help ever, hurt never, love all, serve all. So you try to practice. And then you have a bigger responsibility to the society in which you live, because you consume so much from the society, from the person who comes and empties your trash every week in front of your house, from there to everybody in your life who makes it possible for your own life to go smoothly. So you have a responsibility to the society. So you have to live in the society in such a way, serve the society and the community in which you live in such a way, so that you bring about changes in the society. So for that reason, Swami started in India, the Balavikas program, and then the Sri Satya Sai education program, and then of course Educare and the Education in Human Values program, and of course all those beautiful institutions that he has started in the form of the Satya Sai Higher Institute, the colleges, the hospitals, everywhere Swami has shown how we can transfer ourselves. You're a doctor in the super specialty hospital, give yourself to the patients in a way that you are a teacher or a professor in the Institute of Higher Learning, give yourself to the students. So Swami has shown us that educare is not just something you go and get a degree in the college, but it is for life. Every moment of your life, as a mother, as a father, as a friend, as a person living in the community, as a professional in the community, everywhere you have to be a person who is exemplary because you have that picture of me in your house. You are representing me, Swami says. Because people will say they go to the bhajan every week, but look at them when they come out, it's over for 1 hour. Once they come out, they are their own self. So we have the great responsibility, especially if we are parents or Balavikas or Shri Satya Sai education program gurus, or we are Seva people in the center or office bearers like you in the Global Council, wherever we are. We have to behave in such a way that not only do we transfer ourselves, that we also in the society help to do whatever we can. I hope that kind of answers your question.
Thank you very, very much, Sister Geeta. That was very, very beautiful. And I love what you said that it has to start really in the home with the
Yes.
parents. That beautiful saying of Swami, in the home, in the family, in the nation, and then in the world. So it has to begin with each and every one of us taking that responsibility to be a good example of his teachings.
I
So,
just want to
sure.
give you an example that Swami gave my sons when we were in the interview room and they were young fellows. Then Swami said, especially for the children, um, um, why is it that you have to have respect for your parents? So they said, Swami, because they are our parents and this and that. And Swami said very beautifully to my sons, you see, in Telugu, with a very heavy Telugu accent, he said, head, food do, head do, blood do. All are given by your parents. Food, the mother nurtures you in the womb from the moment that you have taken birth, you are in her womb. With her own food, she nurtures you. The blood that flows in your body, that is given to you by your mother. And the head, food, blood, and head. The head, the intelligence that you have, you claim, I am a professor, I am a doctor, I am this, I am a Nobel laureate, whatever. But that intelligence which you got, where did you get it? It is the genetics, the DNA of your ancestors that has made you so intelligent. So what is there for you to have so much ego? He told my children. So the parents, when they start behaving in the way that they are, and then Swami turned towards me and my husband and said, we are telling this to our children, but the parents should be equally deserving of that respect. So if you're saying one thing and you're behaving in a different manner, and the children see the discrepancy in your actions and what, if there is no harmony in thought, word, and action of the parents, then it's very difficult for the children to give that respect. So it is an intertwined thing, the children and then the parents, and then they go out into the school, the teachers become their examples, and then they go out into society. The society also becomes an example, both good and bad. So that is why we have to create that atmosphere, Swami said to my children, actually.
Very, very good advice from God Himself.
Yes.
Sister Geetha Mohanram, the Sri Satya Sai Global Council West Indies expresses gratitude and appreciation to you for taking the time to share your personal journey and transformation at the lotus feet of Mother Sai. We have been mystified, humbled, inspired by your sharing, and what you've shared will allow us to feel even more closer the presence of Mother Sai. Thank you, thank you, thank you. May Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba continue to bless and guide you, and may you continue to be the loving instrument you are on the unfolding of his divine mission. Jai Sai Ram.
Jai Sai Ram, Brother Faiz. Thank you, everybody in the West Indies, for all the love. Sai Ram.